taking your time to prepare this workshop for our international student. So a little bit about Dr. Holmes. He's Associate Dean and Professor of the Rutgers School of Business at Camden, and he's the founder and CEO of his consulting firm, WH Consulting. He also has his own podcast called Diversity Matters, where he hosts and just leads a discussion with his guests on everything regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you, Dr. Holmes, and now I'll give time to you for you to start your workshop today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the warm introduction. As I said, please feel free to call me Oscar, it's fine. Thank you, Pastor Madden, for the invitation to be here. It's great to meet you, all of you, as well as Lisa. So, you know, time management is a very timely topic, and it's almost ironic because a lot of people, I've given this workshop to workers, professionals, and many of them say, well, I don't have time to even come to the workshop, which is why you need to be at the workshop, right? To find time to come to the workshop. So it's always, you know, tongue in cheek when you give a time management workshop. And what I hope people don't feel after they watch this is that they wasted their time watching it. So hopefully you pick up tips throughout. And I love to experiment on myself. So many of these things, many of the tips I share them because not only have I looked at the research behind this, but also I have employed many of these tactics, and I can attest that they really helped me with time management. So, you know, two big questions come to play when we think about time management. You know, how do you manage your time effectively? But we don't want to work any harder, right? So the idea is not to work harder, but work smarter. So there's a balancing act when we have time management, prioritizing and delegating on one side. And I like to say, when you play to your strengths and you have your best self, that balances things back out so that you can manage all the things you have to do in your schedule. So I'm going to come back to this concept of reflective best self and explain a little bit about how you can do that. So many of the challenges that people face are similar to the examples I've listed on this slide. You know, we have endless emails. For students, they have club meetings, classes, homework. We have competing priorities. Oftentimes, sometimes we may work on or off campus. That requires a lot of times. We are whole individuals, so a lot of times we wear multiple hats. You know, you are a son, daughter, sister, brother, mother, father, all of those type of things, student, you know, employee. So you can wear multiple hats and you feel like there's not enough hours in a day. The pandemic has certainly presented a lot more increased demands and responsibilities for a lot of people. And sometimes many unexpected things come up that we didn't plan for. But one of the ones that is a challenge for many people, and the reason why they actually play or they get plagued by a lot of time management issues, is they have trouble saying no to things, right? You want to be seen like you are a very agreeable person. You know, you want to be seen as someone who is a team player, and you know, you have trouble saying no when sometimes we do need to say no to protect ourselves and to protect our time. So these are a lot of challenges that a lot of people face. So if you see yourself in any of these challenges, you're not alone. A lot of people see themselves as well in these challenges. So the first tip that I'm going to give is to redesign your life to play toward your strengths. And this concept comes from a Harvard Business Review article that one of my friends led, authored this article, Dr. Laura Morgan Roberts, and I linked to it in the slide so that people can go back and look at the presentation, they can actually link directly to the article. But it's all about, when we think about ourselves, a lot of times we think about our weaknesses and we got to correct our weaknesses. We got to improve upon our weaknesses. And what positive organizational psychologists say is, it's not that we need to ignore our weaknesses. It's definitely important to be self-aware, to know the areas in which we are weak in. However, we won't become our best selves if we focus on our weaknesses. We only become our best selves if we focus on our strengths, right? And the example that I love that they give in the article is, if you think about someone who's a third baseman, a baseball player who's a third baseman, right? That third baseman will get much better if they practice and they focus their practice time on being a third baseman and doing the drills that third basemen do, not working on pitching, because pitching is a weakness for them, right? That doesn't make sense. So you need to know who you are as a person and find out those strengths, so that you can now change your life to play towards those strengths. So in order to do this, the authors give you a roadmap on how to find out what your strengths are. How do you complete this reflected best self? So it's similar to a 360-degree feedback survey. They suggest that you ask many people in your life. It can be your current supervisors, it can be current employees, friends, family members. Get a broad range of people to ask them a central question. When have you seen me at my best? So you want them to ask them that question, and it's better to do it via email, so that you can just copy and paste and they can have time to actually think about. But you really want them to think about an example of when they saw you at your best, right? And then once you get all of these examples back in from all of the people that you asked, I typically suggest people asking 10 or more people, so you can get a broad range from different perspectives. I've done this twice myself. So I did one probably about 10 years ago, and I just recently did an update, right, about 3 years ago. So I asked 20 plus people when I did it for myself, right, because I really wanted to get a really good idea of my strengths. And I know it's some people in the authors know they feel embarrassed to do this. They're like, well, it seems egotistical, right, to ask someone directly about my strengths. Like, tell me a time where you've seen me at my best. But that's the point of this exercise. You're not asking them for feedback on weaknesses at all. You're asking them, when did you see me at my best? So once you get all of the feedback back, what you do is you look through it all and you find themes in the feedback that you get. And you name a theme for each of the brackets of feedback. And then you state on the side of it, I'm at my best self when, based on all of the feedback that you have. And then at the end of it, you look at the gap and you say, okay, this is what I need to do. These are my strengths. And for me, just off the top of my head, a lot of strengths that people said about me was that I was very friendly, I was emotive, I had a really high strategic skills. So I redesigned my job based on those skills. And then all the things that I have to do with my job, I get other people to do those things, or I delegate them out, right? So that's the whole idea of a reflected best self. And I promise you it'll make more sense. I know it's abstract right now, but it will make much more sense when you click on the link to the article, because they give you a really great breakdown of what the chart would actually look like as well. I thought I put one on here to show you what a completed one looks like, but it's really simple to do. You just have to invest the time into asking about those strengths and then mapping those themes. So I get this a lot when I talk about time management. People say, you're a professor. How can you relate to us? You don't have the demands that we have. A lot of people think professors, we have glorious lives, right? And we don't answer to anyone. We do what we want to do when we want to do it. Even though there are things like titles and organizations, we don't really have bosses, right? We just answer to ourselves. So how can you relate when I do have a supervisor that's seen as more legitimate, I do have to either punch in or punch out, or I do have to answer to other people. So I just like to give them some perspective, right? Yes, I admit I have a lot of privilege. Being a professor is a great job. To me, it's the best job in the world. So I do have a lot of autonomy over what I do in my day. But, the main things that my job is split into is research, teaching, and service. But as you can see, these are a lot of demands under these different, domains of research, teaching, and service. So while it is true that I do have a lot of autonomy in choosing my day, we all have 24 hours in a day. So my time can get away from me really quickly. So I say all this to say I can relate to anyone despite understanding and recognizing that jobs do differ, right? And I do have a considerable amount of privilege in this job, but I too feel your pain many times when it comes to effective time management. And so much so that I had to do a time audit because I work at Rutgers, and Rutgers is a research-intensive university. Then the main thing in which we get evaluated on is our research productivity. But ironically, our research productivity is the aspect of our job where we are least accountable to external forces, which means that I'm going to be evaluated in my job, and maintaining my job is based on research, but I really don't have as many strings to make sure that I actually get this part done. Because when you think about teaching, right, like I have to be at a place at a certain time, like students out there waiting on me. Like I give work, I have to give feedback. If I don't get feedback in a timely manner, my students going to get upset and I'm going to feel bad, so that's like accountability built into this. If you think about service, if I'm on several different committees, I have people are expecting to get things from me, right? So it's like, I will feel bad if I'm letting other people down. But again, research is the most important thing, but no one is looking over me besides my co-authors maybe, right? But there really is no strings really telling me you got to get this done every week, right? So even though I thought because Rutgers break down, the evaluation, typically 60% of your time should be spent on research, 40% on teaching and 30% on teaching and then 10% on service. I thought this is how I was spending my time. I thought I was spending 60% of my time on research. And, I thought teaching was like 20%, 5% on service, and, miscellaneous 15%. This is what I thought I was doing. But I did a time audit and I found this is what I was actually spending my time on. Very different than what the expectations are. And this is really important for people to see, right, the time, because our expectations oftentimes is really different from our realities. What we think we're spending time on, many times they do not map to our reality. So if research is 60% of my evaluation, why am I only spending 35% of my time on it? Clearly from this graph, I'm spending a lot more time on teaching than I thought. Right. And then the miscellaneous piece is a lot higher as well. So I need to figure out what am I doing with my time. And some factors some facets of work time demands that come up for a lot of people are these four things. They're either supervised, imposed. These are the things that a boss, or if you're a student, it could be a professor. These are the things that they imposed on you. System imposed will be things that people at your same level impose upon you. Your friend asks you to take them somewhere, right? That's a peer, but you didn't necessarily plan to have that 2 hours taken out of your day, right? And then you can self-impose things that makes up or takes a facet of your work time demands. And then there's some discretionary time that comes into play. So I say all those things to say, you really do need to do a time audit. And it doesn't have to be fancy. I'm going to show you pictures of some of mine, but it is absolutely essential. If you want to get a hold of your time, then a time audit is essential. So how do you do one? There's typically 5 steps. You determine your major areas of your time demands. You estimate the time that it would take for you to spend in each of those areas. And then you track all of your activity in a day for a specified time period, right? So for me, when I did my time audit, I looked at a typical week. Like I chose to do a typical week because you don't want to do a typical week because that's not going to give you an accurate reflection of your time. All right. So an atypical week for you could be, you had to go on a business trip or something like that. And that's something that you don't typically do. Don't use that week. You want to make sure you use a week that is similar to what your life is generally like so you can get an accurate audit. You want to review the time audit to determine your proposed versus actual time spent. So this is an important step as well. Project from the start, how do you think you spend your time? Like how much time do you think you actually sleep? How much time do you think you're actually spending in classes? How much time do you actually think you're spending on homework? How much time do you actually think you're spending on, emails, things like that? Project what you think, because what really hits home to get people to change is seeing what they thought they were doing versus after they finish the audit, what they end up seeing. Like for me, it really got my attention when I thought I was spending my time one way. So I projected what I was doing first and then looked at the audit at the end of the time period and saw these numbers were really different. And then you want to, of course, determine the reasons why there are inconsistencies, and then you adjust accordingly. So some of the top reasons why, and these are things that I still, they still plague me every now and then, but people underestimate how long it takes to complete tasks. No matter how many papers I publish, and I've published a good deal, I still always underestimate how long it will take me to write a paper. I'm not learning. But we are human beings and we are typically like that. We typically always underestimate. Someone says, "Oh, can you do this for me?" And you're like, "Sure." Thinking, "Oh, it'll just take me 20 minutes." And I'm taking 2 hours of your time, right? That can blow your whole schedule for the day. And so you want to be cognizant of the fact that people typically underestimate. So if you are projecting how long something's going to take in your mind, depending on the task, you may want to just automatically add in some buffer time. If you say, "Okay, I think it's going to take me an hour," you may just say, "I'm going to just block off 3, right? Because you're likely going to underestimate the time it's going to take you to do something. We also typically underestimate how long we spend on non-work or non-class related stuff. If I were to ask you now, like, how much time do you spend on social media? People would probably say, in a week, I would say no more than 10 hours in a week. But when you do your time audit, you may find out, wow, I actually spent 23 hours out of the entire week on social media, right? So I find this happens a lot. People underestimate the time they spend on non-work, non-class related stuff. Spend too much time on urgent but unimportant work. Things pop up, right? And people tell you, "Oh, I need this back at a certain time," when they may not necessarily need it back at a certain time, but it becomes kind of urgent to you in a moment in time. But it's not work that would actually move your goals forward, meaning that it's unimportant work, right? That sucks a lot of time for people. Underestimate procrastination, and this is one I am guilty of a lot. I procrastinate, but we, again, underestimate how much time we waste. And a lot of people think that they are good multitaskers, but what we know from the research is that people typically aren't as good at multitasking as they think. So when they shift between juggling multiple things at the same time, it actually, the startup cost, meaning like the startup attention that they need, actually prolongs the task even more. So to the degree that you can actually focus your task one at a time, you're much likely to spend less time on that task than trying to multitask. All right. And your time expectations or your supervisor or professors, they are not aligned. So you think, you should be doing one thing, but then someone else actually think you should spend much more time on it. So the tip 3 is have correct expectations for your work hours. Again, if your students, it could be class hours, homework hours, whatever your responsibilities are. And this is my high-tech time audit. not high tech at all, right? It's literally a day calendar that I used, and I put down I was particularly looking at writing because research is one of the biggest points. So these are times that I start and stop different things. So again, it doesn't have to be high tech. I did keep an Excel spreadsheet as well. I'm gonna show you that a little bit later. So tip 4, set and evaluate goals and get an accountability partner. So we're gonna go over goals. You probably heard of SMARTER goals before. So the acronym SMARTER stands for S is specific, M is this measurable, A, you wanna make sure it's aligned with the organization. The R, you wanna make sure you set realistic goals. T is time bound. And the E is you have to evaluate whether or not, the goals were too challenging or too easy. And if there's an inconsistency there, you wanna redo the goals, so start over. So I took from the calendar that you saw when I wrote down all those times that I was doing things on different days. I move it over to an Excel spreadsheet, which you can see screenshots of the Excel spreadsheets here for each week, right? So my goal for the week was, and I broke it down in minutes because that just made more sense to me. So you can just take I'll just take the first week on the right, the lower one. For that week, I said I wanted to write at least 240 minutes within that week. So at the end of the week, I look at my organizer and I count up all of the minutes that I wanted to write. And then I add it to the next column in the spreadsheet, which says, how much did I actually write? And for this particular week, you can see I wrote 285 minutes. And then I have a column saying, well, did you meet your goal? And it's yes or no. If I meet it, yes, that's fine. I move on to the next week. But if I don't meet the goal for that week, then I have to explain what was the reason why I didn't make that goal. And that's what you can see in the spreadsheet. You'll see I actually, the Pope's visit happened in the week of September 25th, 2015. And I was procrastinating and wasting time that week, and I had tech issues. I had a death in the family October 2015, and I had teaching duties. I had conference, I had to deliver a keynote. So the weeks that I did not meet my goal, I had to say, what was the reason why I didn't meet that goal? So I was accountable to myself, right? And then my accountability partner came in because after each week, I sent the email, and you can choose anybody you want. For me, it was one of my friends who worked at the University of Cincinnati, a sociology professor. So he wasn't in my field. So it wasn't like I was, competing against this person or whatever. But, we were just mutual friends and we respected each other. So we kind of, making sure we kind of stay on track. So I do like to choose accountability partners that may not be in your field. So, you may not feel that sense of professional competition or either embarrassment, right? Because this person is not necessarily in your field. And so I would email him at the end of each week to say whether or not I made my goal. And if I didn't, I had to tell him why. And I didn't like sending him emails about not making my goal, right? So it was another step of accountability. So not only will I let myself down, but I also know that I will let someone else down as well. So hold on for just a second, okay? Good night. So let's see if he may come. All right. Good night, buddy. My son. He's going to sleep now. All right. But here's the other tip that I give people. Because writing is so important to my career, I couldn't just let that time go. So if you notice in 2015, September 25th, I had a goal of 300 and I only wrote for 90 minutes in that week. So what happened to the other 210 minutes that I was supposed to write in that week? And I didn't. So what I do, and I don't know if you can see it, I have to set the normal goal that I would set for a week. And then I have to add all of those minutes that I didn't make in the previous week onto the new week so that I don't lose time, which means that I need to take the time away from something else, right? And that keeps me motivated, as well as keeps me on track to make sure I'm spending my time where I need to spend it. So you can see the following week, my goal is 416 minutes, right? Because this time is important. I can't lose it. So I need to find it from somewhere else, right? And that keeps me on track to make sure that I manage my time effectively, because I know it's not, oh, I blew off this week and I'll make it up next week. I force myself from the start of the week to make up that time to get it back. So as you go on, if you are missing a lot of weeks, you know, you may need to redo your schedule again to look at why you're not forecasting appropriate time periods that you need. Or you need to look at the reasons why you are not making these goals that you set for yourself. But the key is, I keep myself accountable, not only to myself, but also to my accountability partner, who I send an email to at the end of each week to make sure I stay on the schedule. And you can see, you know, at one point, I had to go up to 812 minutes in the week of December 11th, 2015, because all of those things were going on, but I got to make up that time sometime. And that forces me to make sure that I manage my time more effectively, because I know I'm not getting away with anything. Eventually, I need to make it up. All right. So know you're available to promise time. And, you know, a lot of people may not do this, but because time was so important to me, I like spreadsheets. I make a lot of spreadsheets for myself. And so what I did was I broke down a week and looked at the hours that were available in a week and the proposed time I've had for these hours, and then actual time I spent on those hours. And then the spreadsheet was, you know, I put in formulas in the spreadsheet so that it will show me how much time I will have that's discretionary in the week. This is a visual representation for me because, you know, we have 24 hours in a day, and, you know, people just have this sense of time being ever present, but we obviously know it's not. There's things we have to do. We have to sleep. We got to take off time to sleep. We have to eat. We got to take all those times, right? So you have to realize how much time do you have to promise in a week. If you already know, let me do, you know, these calculations real quick. You know, out of 168 week, you know, that's 168 hours in a week. You know, if you are sleeping, you know, 8 hours, let's see, if you're sleeping 8 hours each night, you got to have to deduct that time. All right. So let's see. So that's 56 hours gone. That only leaves you with 112, right? More hours left in that week to do things. You know, if you work a 40-hour week job, that leaves you 72 hours, right? So you want to take out those times so that you know how much time you have to promise people when they ask you to do things. So whether something's professor imposed, supervisor imposed, whether it's self-imposed, or whether it's system imposed, and then you need discretionary time. So again, you don't have to be as high tech as I am with time, but the tip is, if you visualize it, it really does help get a hold on how much time you have to promise someone, you know, and how much time it's going to take you. And when people start doing that more often, they really do get a hold of their time and more control over their time. And as you can see on part of the screen, it says, were you overworked that week? And this week, it, you know, because of the hours that I put in, it was yes. And then another week, it was like, I wasn't overworked, right? So that basically tells me, like, I promised too much in that week. And I need to reassess that, or why I said yes to something that I should have said no to. So prioritizing goals and tasks, and I'm going to walk through the steps for this. You know, you want to make a list to schedule what you need to do and what you want to do. Assign priorities according to their importance for reaching your objectives. Again, for me, research is the most important thing, but I wasn't spending most of my time on research. I was doing other things. You assign a rating to each of the activities. on how psychologically easy or difficult it is for you and how pleasurable, painless or painful it is. You want to assign a rating of urgency to each activity. So it's helpful if you put an asterisk next to this is something that's important, 2 asterisks if it's important and urgent, and then 3 if it's painful, important, and urgent. So you want to work on the 3-star ones first, because those are the most important things. Again, it's visualizing what do you need to accomplish, what your main goals are, and attacking those things first. Right? Many times we do the reverse. We want to attack the unimportant things first. And what it does is, because you're using your most valuable resources up front, it then becomes more work for you to complete all the things you need to do, when in fact you need to reverse it and work on your most urgent, most important, and most painful things. Make yourself a priority. This is a picture of my office right now, and it's a simple board. I actually got the gift. This little Driverage Board was a gift from a colleague of mine. And on this board, it's like all of the research projects that I'm engaged in right now, because these are like my most important things. And they tell me where I am in that project. If it's accepted, if it was rejected, am I collecting data right now? Am I writing it? I see this every day when I walked into my office. So it was just smacking me in the face that I needed to focus on these things. So whatever you have that's the most important for you, keep it in your face so that you can focus on it all the time, right? It can be, if you use phone alerts, like you keep it in your calendar, your phone, so that each day you can see this alert go off. These are the most important things that you want to focus on. You know, check the devices, check the email at designated times, so that you stay on a schedule, because again, this is one of the areas that a lot of people lose time in, is they start looking at the email. They were doing one task, but they start looking at an email, and then they go down this rabbit hole of all these other requests coming in, and then it's 2 hours before they get back. And then they find that they spend 30 to 45 minutes just to even refocus back on that task, and that more. So, it's just a train reaction at that point where you just lose a lot of time. Work with your door closed or slightly closed. And so I always give people a tip of, if people do stop by your office, meet them at the door. A lot of times people like say, come on in, and you sit down and be comfortable. And what could have been a 5 or 10-minute meeting turns into an hour because they're comfortable. But when you meet people at the door, you are personable, right? But you're not sitting down and you're meeting them there, and so they don't get the signal that this is a time that they can intrude on your time when you are doing other things, right? If this is an unscheduled meeting, things like that, right? It was just somebody stopping by. All right. I have found that has definitely cut back on the amount of unplanned time that I lost when I switched to this tactic, right? So again, whatever works for you. If you live in the dorms and unexpectedly someone stops by your room, instead of saying come on in, right, you just go to your dorm room to meet them there, because you have to focus on something, right? Now, if it's discretionary time that you have to spend, you're fine. But if you're talking about time that you want to allocate to something else, and this is unexpected, someone's intruding on your time, then a way to keep that down is to meet them at the door. Another bit of advice is, again, have a whiteboard or something outside your door or on your door. That's so that people can leave messages for you where they may not need to interrupt you when you're focusing on getting some things done. If you're working on your homework in your dorm room and your door is closed or slightly closed or whatever, and you can just put a note like, I'm working on homework, please leave a message or something. So again, it just saves the switching cost, because we know from the research, to switch from one task to go to something else, people burn at least 20 minutes trying to get back in the mode of doing that task again. Combine activities to try to reduce your switching cost. So, one of the things that I do a lot now is I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I have to get a lot of information. So audiobooks is just great for me because I can do different tasks, whether I'm walking or whether I'm driving or whatever. I have a podcast, so listen to podcasts, things like that. when I'm studying for things, I like to use note cards. So if I'm standing in line and I keep these with me, or if it's on my phone, when I'm standing in line at Starbucks or whatever, I'm pulling out the note cards or whatever. So that's what I mean by combining activities. All right. So when you're at different places, if you can do different things, combine those activities so that you can maximize your time. Even now, as an associate dean, I have even more demands on my time right now. But because, again, research is important, I block out or I schedule time for myself in my schedule so that my admin can't schedule some things, right? So for you, no matter where you are, student or whatever, block off time in your schedule at the beginning of the week. Or I do it sometimes 2 weeks in advance because I know, there's some things that may come up that's unexpected. So that has helped me maintain the research productivity, even though I still have an administrator position right now. Don't hold pointless meetings. I like to say, if things can be said in the email, put it in the email. That's a great one. Understanding your scope and your expertise and your principal goals first and make those visible. That allows you to be able to say no a lot quicker and better if you stay to the scope of your expertise, so you don't agree to do something and then you're like, oh my God, I actually have to prepare a lot to do this and I wasn't expecting this time to prepare, right? Try to, just like exercise, the experts say to get the most out of exercise is to work at intervals where you do max intervals and then you rest for a period, then do max intervals again. Same thing with work. So if you can kind of work intensely for 90 minutes, that means like you really pulling out all of the distractions, the emails, closing things. So you can try to break your day in 90-minute chunks. That tends to help with time management because you're focusing on that one thing. And, taking short breaks for a quick walk. So the last tip, I think it's the last tip, is saying no or at least negotiate. Right. So that's the hard thing for a lot of people, is saying no to people. So you want to ask yourself some tough questions. So you may say, why am I spending so much time in low value meetings? And the answer to that question could be, I'm afraid that people won't think of me as a team player if I decline meeting invitations. All right. So you may ask yourself, well, what explains the amount of time I'm blowing on unscheduled visitors? So the answer could be, I feel rude if I told people that I didn't have time to talk with them. I also leave my door open all day. So you see how you ask these questions of yourself, and if you see you can answer them to see where you may fall. Why do I spend so much time on email and the internet? Some of it could be class related, but much of it is just a way to procrastinate. So ask yourself the tough questions. At the end of the day, if you are doing your time audits and you see you're not meeting your goals, you're constantly feeling like, your time is not managed well, ask yourself the tough questions and be able to sit with the answers that you have for yourself or why you find yourself in this way. I had to ask myself these tough questions. I had to ask myself, why am I not spending more time on my research when that's the most important thing to keep my job? And then I had to answer those tough questions, right? Then I had to reevaluate and do something differently, which is what I did. Saying no and meaning it. So people will pressure you to say yes. That's a fact. Don't take it personally, right? So the fact of the matter is people do like to use influence tactics. That's common. It's okay to say no, and don't take it personally if someone will try to use some influence tactics, right? Keep no as close to the beginning of the sentence as possible and give a neutral no. So a neutral no means that it's not an inflection in your voice. It's not a surprise no. It's no, no. And you want to keep it as close to the beginning of the sentence because research shows that no's near the beginning of the sentence have more impact. So people are less likely to try to pressure or to follow up when no is at the beginning of sentences versus if you wait and have no at the end of your sentence. And this could be the same thing if you're working via email as well. So, instead of giving this long preamble of why, you can't do something, and then at the end of you say, I'm sorry, I can't, saying no, so unfortunately I can't do this, then you can give a justification, right? So it's keeping it at the beginning so that people won't try to use as many influence tactics as they can. I teach management and I teach an entire class on influence tactics. So I'm teaching people how to get people to do more things that they don't want to do, right? So I'm teaching managers to have that skill. And so people will try to use those skills that they've learned to get you to do the things that you don't want to do, but don't take that personally and then be able to counteract those tactics and strategies that they're using on you. All right. You can acknowledge the concern that someone have, but don't give hope, right? So what I mean by this is, some people will say things like, well, I don't know just yet, but, it's a possibility that I could get to it Wednesday, right? This is giving someone hope when you don't want to do it anyway, right? So just acknowledge the concern that you have. I am concerned that I won't be able to pull this off for you, and I know that's an important thing to you, right? But I can't do it. That's much different than, I know it's important to you, I might be able to give it Wednesday, because that person has some hope in this. And then if they hear hope in it, they're going to still try to pressure you more and more, when in fact, you already know how much time you have, and you don't have that time to commit to it. So the next thing is just knowing your triggers. Which tactics are you vulnerable to? And that will help you be able to fight against the tactics that people try to use on you. Advice is, don't weaken your no with self-criticisms. This comes up a lot. People will say things like, no, I can't do that, and I'm bad with writing, right? Say, someone asking you to help write some slogan or plan or something, or flyer or whatever. So you don't want to do it. You don't have the time to do it. But to make it sound less harsh, you will apply self-criticism. Like, I'm bad at writing. Basically, so you don't want me to do that. Don't use a self-criticism, right? Because again, a self-criticism also leaves the door open for people to say, oh, wait a minute, actually, no, you're not, right? You're really good at this, and I remember when you did this for me. Then you find yourself having to backpedal again and try to come up with another one, right? So self-criticism typically are not a good strategy to use. So just give them a strong no. You can delay your answer, right? People, people tend to act in one way if they're on the spot, but if they have time to process it, get some space, they then may act a totally different way. So delaying your answer could give you the time that you need for, one, the person who made a request to find someone else to fulfill that request, or two, also make the no that you will come up with be more palatable for the other person, right? So delaying your answer is another effective way. It's not getting back. You can acknowledge, so acknowledge your email. I can't get to it right now, right? I'll follow up later. And a scheduled time where you can follow up, you may have more clarity, right, of being stronger in your desire to say no, or you may find some new time. But the fact that you delay that answer gives you a leg up in the negotiation for saying no. Telling your counterpart what you can say yes to is really important for time management. No, I can't get this to you, or I can't do all of these things. This is what I can do, right? I can only do 1 and 2 for you. That is a really respectful way to manage your time. And finally, you have to practice saying no and practice being assertive, particularly if you're not typically an assertive person. NASA do thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of simulations. And I always like to tell this story. When NASA say, Houston, we have a problem, they don't say, Houston, we have a problem. Like they're not exasperated and like going out of their mind. But this is a life or death situation. They can say, Houston, we have a problem. They can say it with so much calmness. It's because they practice those simulations over and over and over again. And that's what you have to do. If there's a trigger for you, if there's something that you have difficulty doing, you need to practice hearing yourself say no, hearing yourself walk through several situations that you're commonly in. So then when you find yourself in that situation, you can say no confidently, assertively, and it sounds natural for you. So this is all I have for you tonight. Hopefully, these tips help you. I can 100% tell you that they helped me. And if it wasn't for doing this work years ago, I wouldn't be able to be here tonight because I know exactly how much time I have in my week. So when Pastor Manna reached out to me, I knew if I could say no, if I could say yes, because I knew how much time I had. So the work that I put in years ago helped me be here tonight with you. Because if I were the same person, then I would definitely not have this time to do this tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes, or I should say, Oscar. Thank you,
Yes,
Oscar.
that's right.
Thank you for the presentation. So I really love a quote from Mr. Fred Rogers that says, anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that's mentionable can be manageable. And I feel like you really give a workshop about time management that's measurable and also manageable. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I saw Ethan join us during the presentation. So I think we can open a Q&A session for Oscar. Any questions?
Ethan.
Any comments?
Ethan, are you a student?
No, I graduated last year.
Okay, congratulations.
No, 2 years ago, actually, 2019. Yeah.
Congratulations. So how are you doing with your time management?
I'm still trying to learn. I try to juggle in between different tasks. So I think the tips that you shared tonight is really helpful, especially, I'm wearing different hat, in my current job. So it's really helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you think you, if you, hopefully you will do the time audit, right? Which area do you think you would underestimate the time you spend on something?
Oh, I will agree with you. The procrastination. Yeah. And also, we spend a lot of time surfing the social media. Try to run away from the official work.
Right. Yeah, that's really common. And again, it was a reality check for me that I was spending so much time doing things that were not important. I was wasting time, right? And I get exasperated at the end of the week, and it's like, why am I so tired? And why am I not getting these things done? And it's like, well, part of it, is commitments that a lot of people pile on me, but another part of it was a lot of my own time wasting. And being in business school world and being in management, right? You often hear people say that they work 80-hour weeks and things like that. And I admit I used to say that a lot because, it just sounded good. And everyone seemed to have been saying it, if you want to be seen as a professional and you work hard. And, and then when I looked at my time audit, I was like, wait a minute, that's way overblown. I'm not working 80-hour weeks. And then when people say that they do, right, I always ask them, so tell me what's a normal day like for you, right? And then when they start telling me, it's like, you do know that's nowhere near 80 hours, right? That you work. But yeah, I think, in the business world, it's like a badge of honor a lot of times, particularly in American culture, that you like this overworked, and we throw numbers out there, but we throw them out there because we really don't have a sense of the time that we actually really do spend. If you think, 80 hours a week, when I broke it down, you would literally have to be at work, say from, like 7 a.m. to like 11 p.m. at night, right? to do that, and Monday through Friday, right? Do that Monday through Friday. And again, most people are not doing that, but it just sounds good when people say 80. I was really working like 50 to 60 hours a week. Like that was my real work time.
Getting back to Ethan's point, we do have an upcoming workshop on a related topic. It's on understanding and overcoming procrastination. So we're doing that in a couple of weeks. So hopefully that'll be helpful.
Yeah. So again, for me, when I put things on paper and saw it visually, it because I've heard all these things before, and I went to workshops myself even previously before. And I didn't change behaviors, you know, it's like, okay, yeah. But then I went to this one workshop. It was part of a conference and it was on time management as well, right? But specifically for research productivity. And they was like, that's what the research says, do it. And I said, I finally committed to doing it. And I did the audits and I looked at it and it was like, wow, it changed. It totally changed the game for me. So, yeah. Yes, it requires some startup time, you know, to map it out. But the startup time it requires, it definitely pays off in the long run.
So Oscar, can I have a question for you?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I'm also a big fan of Excel, and I do a lot of things in Excel. So I saw that template you have, like for every day in a week, you put how many time that you expect you to do on certain task, and what's the actual time you put on that. So did you what time do you usually do that? Do you fill that table every day after all the work's done, or at the end of the week?
So I don't use it anymore. So when I got tenured, I stopped using it. So that was like my gift to myself. Like I got tenure and so I wasn't worried about the clock so much anymore. But when I was, you know, working towards tenure, I would do it typically at the Friday, right? So I would map out the goal for the week and I would do it on a Friday and then go through the week and put in my calendar book, like, you know, I put those things down in my calendar book each day. And then on that Friday, I will update it so I can look back over the week and then make a goal for the next week.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. But yeah, I have internalized much of these tips now to the point where I put things in my iPhone calendar. So like I block out certain times and stuff in my iPhone calendar now. And I have practiced enough that I keep, you know, things open so that I can make sure I stay on time.
Cool. Okay.
So you can see I kind of graduated maybe from the Excel spreadsheet. But it's ironic because people like, when I did it, I literally can go back to the spreadsheet. I'm sure I have it saved somewhere in a folder. And it can be 2013, you know, the week of September 4th. And I can tell you what I did in that week, you know.
I actually have, I created a similar spreadsheet when I was in undergraduate, or it's like 5 or 6 years ago or something. Yeah. And I made it really fancy, like colorful and visualize the hours. But then like I have to record my hours daily. So I just like gradually forget about the task and feel like it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So I didn't stick to it. But now I kind of like want to start that again.
Yeah. Well, it's only necessary, you know, again, if you feel like you are having difficulties, right, in time management. But if you have your, you know, if you're smooth sailing, if you have all the skills down, then you're fine. Like I mean, I laugh, but by tenure, like I really did want to meet the most important goal of my professional career was to get tenure, right? But I've been practicing so long, so all of those years up to tenure, that I've basically, you know, it's on autopilot now of how I spend my time in the things that, you know, the tips I share with you, right? Like I said, I redesign my job, I play to my strengths, I do all of that stuff naturally now anyway. So yeah.
Cool. Do we have any other questions or comments from the group? If not, then I'll stop the recording. And thank you, Oscar, again for
thank you
for